Good day everyone, and welcome to my Waking Flame guide for Magicka Sorcerer PvP. As always, I will explain what are, in my opinion, the best way to build a Magicka Sorcerer, and this will mostly be focused on solo and small scale PvP. I will be talking both about CP, NoCP and dueling environments. Now, this will be a little bit different because usually I have already uploaded gameplay of a patch before the guide. This time it will be afterwards. It's the same reason why this guide is a little bit later than it usually is because I'm on a holiday. But for most of you who will be watching this guide a couple of weeks after release, this will no longer be relevant information, so I'm just going to start straight ahead with the rest of the explanations. As always, you can find timestamps to everything in the description. I will be talking about a lot of builds, of course, and if you want to skip to a certain part that interests you, for example if you're looking for a NoCP build, you can find that in the timestamps. The same goes for the website. If you want to go over everything at your own pace, everything will be written down there as well. Lastly, I do advise you also check out the gameplay guide that you can find in the description, where I will be explaining some more things that aren't build related, such as burst rotations, mechanics for Magicka Sorcerer, and so forth. So with that out of the way, I will start with the changes in this patch. The only sorc specific change is done to Ball of Lightning. In previous patches this was a really strong escape tool and would absorb all projectiles cast at you, but for this patch it only absorbs 1 per second anymore, which is a pretty big nerf, a necessary nerf I guess. But whatever the reasoning was, now Streak is the better option for just about every single build, and you will not see me use Ball of Lightning anywhere. That's it for the sorcerer changes, it's just that. But something that does affect builds quite a bit is the new sets that they have brought out in this Waking Flame patch, namely the proc sets Hrothgar, Hrothgar's Chill and Dark Conversions. I will have a build with Hrothgar in this guide as well. Dark Conversions for Magicka Sorcerer is more relevant in bombing situations. I haven't included it in this guide, but I will most likely during this patch make a specific bombing build for Magicka Sorcerer and upload that together with gameplay as well. This guide will not contain any gameplay, it will be in other videos, which is why I'm keeping that specific set for later as well, as I would like to show it together with some bombs. Then one more thing about these sets, as you probably know if you've played this patch, they are really strong, and I do expect that at some point they will get nerfed, unless if ZeniMax is yet again disappointing, or I don't know. But in any case, I will put that, if they get nerfed, in the description as well, because of course any build that I present with those sets will then be outdated. Now for the builds themselves, I will start with the CP builds. The first one I want to present is a very general one, similar to the ones I had last patch, where I just give you some updates on what has changed to it. But then afterwards I do have a new build with Hrothgar as well. But I'm going to start with this because the build I will now present is a very staple one, a very basic one for Magicka Sorcerer, and very flexible as well in terms of what you can run with it. So I will go over it pretty quickly. This is 5 Crafty Alphic in combination with 2 Trainee, 3 Ancient Grace, Death Dealer's Feet, and 1 piece Magma Incarnate. Magma Incarnate is also a new set, and the 1 piece is really good to have on the Magicka Sorcerer because Magicka recovery and stamina recovery are something you're looking for quite a lot. In terms of traits and all that and purpose of this build, I run this particular thing pretty often. It's what I call my roll sword, because I'm focusing a lot on stamina sustain here with full well fitted traits, as well as some extra stamina recovery through the jewelry and champion points, and then next to that good Magicka sustain and maximum Magicka. Keep in mind the stats here that you see are pretty low, but I'm running Death Dealer's Feet, and there's also a new champion point that boosts your sustain pretty significantly, but only while in combat. So for the maximum Magicka and well the other 2 maximum stats as well, count in like 3k more for the full Death Dealer's Feet proc, and then about 150 to 200 more Magicka and stamina recovery. This high stamina sustain allows me to roll a lot and also use Dark Conversion a lot, which makes me very agile, and I can sustain basically forever in solo 1vx situations, which is what I mostly do. However, it is not easy to start out with a setup like that. If you're a beginner at PvP, and as I mentioned, this is kind of like a basic build you can start with and it's flexible, it is better to change some things out. Namely, you don't want to focus on stamina sustain as much because your roll dodge game is not going to be on point just yet, and you don't want to rely on it that much as of yet. And it's better, instead of well fitted, to go with impenetrable on your gear as well, because impenetrable is going to help you cover up for mistakes you might make. It is also more forgiving, as in if you miss out one roll dodge when you go with full well fitted and stam sustain like I do, you can get punished really hard. Not really the case if you run impenetrable and more Magicka regeneration, and maybe the Mage Windows for more maximum Magicka and bigger shields. The skills, I will go over them quickly. It's always the same, you know, Streak, Fragments, Elemental Weapon, Curse, Fury, Overload, Backbar, Boundless Storm, Dampen Magic, Healing Ward, Hardened Ward, Dark Conversion, and Rest Ult or Undo. I've been running Rest Ult right now simply because I'm like it's more reliable in a bit of a laggy situation in which I am right now. On the backbar, as always, the Escapist's poison. I think this is the best poison to backbar, and I definitely recommend not trying to skip out on this one. And then the trace on the staves are defending and sharpened, full arcane on the jewelry as well. For the food, Bewitched Sugar Skulls still counts as well. Mundus is the Aether Knock. Vampire stage 3 is possible for this build. It will be some damage reduction, but it's too much of a regeneration loss for me to actually go with that. So that's why I keep away from going Vampire. There are some changes you can make to this build. As I mentioned, it is flexible. You can run impenetrable, as I mentioned, but you can also greatly boost the maximum Magicka that you have by going with the Sword Board of Ancient Grace on the backbar, changing out your skills, namely going with Surge instead of Healing Ward here, and then Undo instead of the Rest Ult. And then on top of that, you can also go with the Mage Mundus, things like that. And also, if you change your CP to include Arcane Supremacy, you can boost your maximum Magicka quite a bit to about over 50k, 52, 53k. You can even go higher if you push it. I'm just mentioning this because it's really useful to have bigger shields sometimes, especially if you find yourself lacking on defense. That being said, I will also show a tanky build in just a bit. Enough about the changes to this build. I'm going to go over the champion points because some things there have changed as well for the blue and red tree. For the blue tree, I'm no longer running Arcane Supremacy, except if I really want to push my Magicka, like I mentioned, or Resilience anymore, because now there is Ironclad over here, which reduces your damage taken by direct damage attacks by 2% per stage. That is going to be better than having that 10% crit damage bonus from crit damage reduction from Resilience. And I'm running this Ironclad in combination with Duelist buff, and this is going to be my defensive CPs. And then Mastered Arms and Deadly Aim is going to boost just about all your damage that you deal as a magsorc, and is thus the most useful CPs to have here. For the red CPs, some changes there have happened as well. Bastion it stays, it is a staple, and then Sustained by Suffering is a new CP over here, which I'm using instead of Rejuvenation, because they have nerfed Rejuvenation, and instead added this thing, which is basically the exact same thing. You're always under a negative effect in PvP, be it an armor reduction or a dot or whatever, which means that this thing will basically always be active and just quite simply replace Rejuvenation. Secondly, there's Pain's Refuge. This will take the place of Juggernaut and also give you quite an amount of damage reduction if you're taking a lot of pressure from enemies. Me especially, when I do solo PvP, when I 1vx, I'm always going to be under a lot of negative effects, which means I'm going to get quite a benefit from that Pain's Refuge. That being said, Relentlessness here is also very good, because the major protection after being stunned or feared is very useful, because people try to burst you down with a stun. So you know that if a stun is incoming, you'll also probably take some burst of damage, especially in things like duels and such, and then Relentlessness is really nice to have instead of Pain's Refuge. And then lastly, Arcane Alacrity is the roll dodge CP that I often use on my roll dodge builds, like this one just now, but it can also be changed for Survival Instincts. It is basically just a CP to boost your stamina sustain. Then for the second build for CP, this is the one that will be using Hrothgar, which is a very strong new proc set that they added. a quick word about Hrothgar. It is currently pretty broken in the sense that it will often deal a lot more damage than intended. It's also an AoE, which is going to go together very well with the AoE stun, that is streak, that you have. So in a burst combo this is going to add a lot of extra damage, and if you're looking to push damage in your build, Hrothgar is definitely a really good choice for magsorc. Often Hrothgar is run in combination with Magicka as a mythic, because Magicka is going to increase the damage of Hrothgar as well. However, on the Magicka Sorcerer I did keep Death Dealer's Feet instead, otherwise my maximum Magicka will be going too low. On the back bar I have 42k, if Death Dealer's Feet procs this will be about 45 to 46k, which is a decent amount, not super high, but in exchange for the damage of Hrothgar it's quite worth having. The rest of the gear is quite similar to the previous build, in the sense that I'm running 5 crafty Elfique again, in combination with Magma Incarnate's arm cops, and then 2 willpower on the back bar. I'm running Hrothgar on jewelry and on the chest here, and then as I said Death Dealer's Feet. The traits here I still have well fitted, because I still play some sort of a roll-sorc build, a bit of a hybrid from what I had previously, but again you can easily go impenetrable here in order to reduce your damage taken, in order to play it a bit more safe, so keep that in mind. The back bar willpower restoration staff is defending, and the front bar is as always sharpened. The poison escapist, the Mundus Aethernock, and still no vampire and bewitched sugar skull's food. I don't really have anything more to say about this build. It's basically something to increase your buff with Hrothgar, and I still keep decent maximum Magicka on the back bar because of willpower and crafty Elfique, with Magma as sustain. The skills remain the exact same as well as what was there before. Then for the third CP build, this is going to be one that I've mentioned in previous patches as well, but a bit different. It's the one with Ironblood. For those of you who don't know, Ironblood is the best installed damage reduction for a Magicka Sorcerer. It gives you a huge amount of 30% damage reduction, which makes you very tanky. It does also reduce your movement speed, which is something that a lot of people have troubles with playing around. However, on a Magicka Sorcerer this is actually not that bad, because your main movement will always be streak, and of course you do notice it when it procs and you are slow when you walk, but it does not reduce the distance of streak or how fast it goes or anything, which means that you retain a lot of your movability. I'll try to get some gameplay up with this setup as well this patch, and that way you can also see in combat that it doesn't hinder me that much, especially compared to the amount of damage reduction you get from it as well. So this Ironblood I run on the back bar with the jewelry, 3 magic recovery enchants and arcane jewelry. On the front bar I have Spinner here. This is a placeholder, don't get me wrong, it's a really good front bar set, but you can run any offensive set you want here. For example, Hrothgar from the previous build would also fit. But Spinner is definitely something you can't go wrong with too, as it gives you a nice amount of damage and then 2 lines of maximum Magicka, which is really nice to have on Magicka Sorcerer, as this will make your shields bigger. So yeah, 5 spinners on the front bar. Enchants are always a full Magicka. Again, impenetrable and well fitted. I've gone with a mix here, but it is completely up to you again whether you want to have the extra stamp sustain and movability, or rather the damage reduction from impenetrable. To finish off this build I am using 2 trainee, Magma Incarnate's arm cops and Gaze of Sithis. Gaze of Sithis will make you even tankier on top of that Ironblood, and that means even though the maximum Magicka isn't that high and your shields thus aren't that big, you'll still be very tanky. Keep in mind this 40.5k Magicka you see here is too low for this build, because actually on this build I use the Mage Mundus and not the Aethernock Mundus, but I can't just quickly change because I'm standing here. The Mage Mundus will pump up that maximum Magicka to about 43k, which is on the lower end but not super bad. In combination with Bastion, which you have the Bastion CP in that you have it because you're in CP campaign of course, and the tankiness you get from Ironblood, you'll still be extremely tanky. The only the skills here on the back bar, you can see I'm running Bound Ages, which also serves to get that maximum Magicka to a decent point, and to also grant you extra resistances on the back bar. Next to that the skills are the same as before. And just to finish this off with, the Poison Still Escapists with Bewitched Sugar Skulls If when you switch then to the Mage Mundus, your sustain will suffer a little bit. You'll go down to about 1.6k Magicka recovery, and yeah, your stamina recovery stays the same, but keep in mind you will still get sustained by suffering, that champion point on top of it, which makes your Magicka recovery pretty decent. And because of the amount of damage reduction that this build has, you can actually do a restoration heavy attack every now and then on top of the dark conversions that you do usually, and this will help with the sustain quite a bit for this particular build. So that means there's not really an issue with sustain either. Then lastly, this also counts for CP, so I'm going to do this before I get into the NoCP builds, is the Dueling Build that I have for this patch. This time I've gone with a full Magsorc Dueling Build, because as always Magsorcs are stronger at duels than non-Magsorcs. Usually I've made a non-Magsorc build because I enjoy playing that a bit more, but this patch, because Magicka Sorcerer is not that strong in duels, I've decided to just present a full Magsorc this patch to deal with all the stamp crows and the Magicka decays that run around these days, which are very hard to beat in a duel. So for this Magsorc I will be using 5 Necropotents in combination with 220 more of the Infernal, with the Death Dealer's Feet Mythic, and then the Master's Ice Staff perfected ideally. I just don't have that yet, and I really cannot be bothered to farm Dragonstar Arena more, and then on the front bar 2 Willpower. The skills, I'm going to go over that first as well. You have your Familiar, Fragment, Elemental Weapon, Hardened Ward, Twilight and Undo, and on the back bar Familiar, Frost Clench, Twilight Matriarch, Curse. It should be the other third morph of Curse here, Daedric Prey, not Haunting Curse. But again, I've just kept this morph here because of me presenting all these builds with the other morph of Curse as well. So keep in mind there should be Daedric Prey to buff the damage that your pets do. Then Elemental Drain and Atronach, a very important ultimate to have for duels as a Magsorc, as a Magsorc. I want to start with a quick word about Frost Clench and the Master's Ice Staff. I think this is a really strong option for duels these days, because Master's Ice Staff with the Infused and Destructive Impact set will grant you well over 1k spell damage when you cast a Frost Clench. But on top of that, Frost Clench got some really nice buffs for this specific one-on-one use this patch as well, because they made it so that it will guarantee chilled status effect. This is going to give you minor maim, which is a nice bit of 5% damage reduction, and then on top of that you also get major maim, which is 10% damage reduction. So if you keep that skill up and you cast it every now and then, not only do you get a lot of damage from the Master's Ice Staff, you will also get a lot of damage reduction due to the properties of this skill. It will also root the enemy, which is something really annoying to fight in a duel, and is useful to have. Now, something you might have noticed is that this build does not have Dark Conversion. You can slot it together with Crit Surge instead of your Twilight here, so Crit Surge will then be the healing and Dark Conversion will be an extra bit of sustain. However, this is a duel, and the sustain you have when you're sustained by suffering procs is pretty decent for a duel, together with Elemental Drain and maybe the occasional heavy attack, which you're also a bit safer to do in a duel than in like Open Mode 1vx. It should already be fine, but keep in mind that you have the option to drop the Twilight for Surge and Dark Conversion. If you do that, you can also run immovability potions instead of the usual spell power potions. Immovability potions being with Magicka, immovability and spell crit. It makes it very safe to deny enemy bursts with, of course, because you know you can't be CC'd, and you can also cast Dark Conversion without fearing being interrupted. The back bar and front bar, some skills have changed here. There's Hardened Ward on the front bar here and Curse on the back bar. This is simply because with Daedric Prey you can cast this pretty early on in your burst rotation. You don't need to have it on the same bar, and on top of that I have Willpower on the front bar, and this will be a buff to my shield here, makes it quite a bit bigger, and will also buff the damage. I have Undo here on the main bar because this is the bar on which the most amount of time is spent, with the main defensive and offensive abilities being here. But H-Knock on the back bar is also really important. As I said before, cast this as soon as you have it. It's great both defensively and offensively in a duel, and will add a lot of pressure on top of your Twilight and your Familiar. Quick note about the gear now. I think I've already gone over the sets at least, but I just want to go over the specific pieces to show the traits as well. It's full arcane, infused back bar this time, and sharpened front bar. It has a shock lift, but you can also place the escapist poison here if you want mostly see immunity. However, you already have a root from Destructive Clench, which is why I'm keeping the shock lift now. The gear is full imprintable. I know I have 2 well fitted here, but this is just from using it in other builds. For the CP, something I forgot to mention as well is that here I do like to switch out Pain's Refuge for Rejuvenation. I know Rejuvenation is not that much sustain, but on the other hand, Pain's Refuge will not be doing that much either, because you're only taking pressure from one enemy in a duel, and that one enemy will often have not as many negative effects on you as multiple would, so Rejuvenation is worth having. And instead of Arcane Alacrity, because this is not a roll sword build, I like to go with the Relentlessness CP. In a duel, people often try to burst you together with CC, so if you get CC, if you get CC'd, you'll often eat a lot of incoming damage, and having major protection is really useful, so Relentlessness as a 4th champion point here. Now for the NoCP builds, I have moved to the NoCP campaign to show this in order not to have any interference from the CP points. The first build I want to present is one that is basically a changed version of that main classic build I was presenting at the start of this guide. It has similar sets, so 5 Crafty Elfic in combination with 3 Ancient Grace and 2 Trainee. The traits are mostly the same too: full arcane, defending and sharpened staves, full well fitted gear as well. You can always switch in again more impenetrable, but I've already explained that earlier. I have gone with Cities here because in NoCP damage reduction is often quite a problem. You can easily get one shot if you make mistakes. So definitely, like if you play a roll sword like I do, which relies on that a lot, it's very easy to get punished by it, and sometimes you can get one shot if you make mistakes. But yeah, Cities gives you a bit of that extra tankiness. Magma Incarnate is, I keep that because the sustain from it is really nice. It makes up for the sustain loss of being in NoCP. So I still keep a decent amount of magic recovery of about 1.8k and 900 stamina recovery. You can always get some more if you want. It depends on your choice of regeneration and chance here. If you get more try and chance, you can also buff your stamina recovery a little bit more. You can see that despite being in NoCP, I still keep a pretty high amount of maximum magic on the back bar of 48k. Because in NoCP you don't have Bastion and your shields get nerfed quite a bit, they're quite small. The reason I do this, the way I do this is of course by having a build that focuses on it a lot with Ancient Grace and Elfic and such, but also because on the back bar now again I have Bound Aegis instead of Bound Storm. I do prefer it here because again bigger shields, but also because you don't have to cast Bound Storm anymore. In CP it can be useful to have that because I like the bit of mobility it gives, but that's a bit of a niche use. In NoCP you might as well go with Bound Aegis because the maximum Magicka, and not having to cast Bound Storm means a sustain boost because you don't have to spend magic on this skill anymore. I've also gone with Rapid Regeneration instead of Healing Ward here because Healing Ward, just like your other shields, gets quite a nerf in NoCP, while Rapid Regeneration stays mostly the same, making this a really good heal to have for NoCP. All the other skills are basically still the same. If you're struggling with sustain because of the NoCP sustain nerfs, you can also go with Elemental Terrain instead of Fury. And if you struggle with tankiness, next to using this build with Cities and all that, you can also go with Greater Storm, H-Knock instead of Overload in order to hold your ground a bit better. If you don't have Cities, I mentioned it before already, but you can use Chuden as well then instead of the Magma Incarnate and Cities. But that's about it for this build. Pretty basic and the same version as I used in the CP campaign here as main build. Now, as I mentioned before, damage that you take can be really high in NoCP and you can get one shot. Another way to solve this is also by going with a specific damage reduction set, such as Swift here, which I have equipped. Of course your maximum Magicka is a bit small because you've sacrificed Ancient Grace and Trainee in order to have the damage reduction, but this will make your shields quite a bit tankier in return. So even though your shields are a bit small, they will also be quite significantly tankier. So do keep this in mind in case you have a lot of issues with tankiness in NoCP. But that is it for the builds in this patch. As always, everything is on the website as well, so in case I missed something in terms of detail and trade or enchant, you can check it out there easily. Everything is written down and you can watch it at your own pace as well. If you have any questions about these builds, feel free to post them into the comment section. You can also join the Discord, link in the description, and ask me questions there. And then lastly, I also have Patreon in case you want a bit more personalized guidance in terms of gameplay reviews and 1v1 sessions as well, where I will teach you to play Sorc too. But in any case, Patreon helps to keep this channel running, so if you would check it out, I would appreciate it tremendously. I hope this guide has been useful, and as always, I will see you next time. Goodbye.